So, let's talk about a story that is just incredibly chilling. Imagine this. You're a prosecutor, right? Your whole job is putting the worst of the worst behind bars. But then you become the target.
I mean, what happens then? What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, but in a courtroom? This isn't some movie plot. This actually happened, and it led to one of the most shocking murder cases in Uganda's history. So let's go back in time. The date is March 30th, 2015, a Monday. To really get what went down, you have to picture that evening. It's a pretty typical Monday night in Kampala. You know the scene. People are getting home from their jobs, stores are starting to shut down for the day. Just normal. But right in the middle of all that ordinary, everyday stuff, something absolutely terrible was about to happen.
A top prosecutor, a woman named Joan Kagezi, is shot dead in her car. And her kids were right there. They watched it happen. Right away, investigators knew this wasn't just some random act of violence. This wasn't a robbery that went bad.
No, this was something else entirely. This was a hit, a professional one. 2 shots, fired from a motorcycle with absolute precision. This wasn't just murder. It was an execution, a message. And it sent a shockwave through the entire country.
So, that brings us to the big question, right? Who is this woman, and why would someone want her dead so badly? To figure that out, we have to look at who Joan Kagezi was, and just how feared she was in court. Okay, so here's her title: Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions and Head of the International Crimes Division. That's a mouthful, but what it means is she was a big deal, like the top of the top, in charge of the cases nobody else wanted to touch, the most dangerous, high-stakes stuff in the whole country.
And just look at what was on her plate. We're talking about the suspects from the 2010 Kampala twin bombings, war criminals, human traffickers, huge organized crime syndicates. I mean, think about it. With every single one of those cases, she was making powerful, really dangerous enemies.
And it wasn't just in Uganda that people knew how important she was. International groups were watching too. This quote from the International Center for Transitional Justice really drives it home. They said her death was a significant loss to justice in Uganda. Not just a loss for her family, but for the idea of justice itself.
So you'd think, after a murder this big, right, the country's top prosecutor, it expected massive, fast investigation. But that's not what happened at all. Instead, there was just silence. Years of it.
7 years. Just let that sink in for a second. The top terrorism prosecutor in the country is killed, and for 7 straight years, nothing. Not a single person charged. You can imagine how people felt. Confidence just plummeted. Everyone was asking, will we ever get justice for her?
And this timeline really lays it all out, doesn't it? She's killed in 2015. The case goes completely cold. Then, finally in 2023, there's a little bit of movement. But the real breaks in the case, those don't come until 2025, almost a decade later.
So what happened? After all that time, how does a case this cold suddenly heat up? Well, after years of hitting nothing but dead ends, investigators finally got a real lead.
And here it is, the moment that changes everything. In May of 2025, one of the suspects, a guy named Daniel Kiwatule, decides he's ready to talk. He pleads guilty, and what he says just blows the entire investigation wide open.
And this wasn't some vague confession. He gave them everything. He admitted he was part of the whole thing from the start. He helped plan it, he did surveillance on Kagezi, he even handed out the guns. Because he cooperated, he got a deal, 35 years in prison. But his story? It led to an even bigger question. Because, okay, you've got one of the guys who pulled the trigger, but who hired him? Who's the mastermind? Thanks to this confession, prosecutors could finally go after the person they suspected was pulling the strings from the very beginning.
And that was the billion-dollar question, right? The one that hung over this case for almost a decade. Who had the motive? Who had the power? Who had the nerve to order a hit on the country's most powerful prosecutor? Well, the answer was just stunning. It wasn't some terrorist leader or a drug lord. The man they charged was on the inside. A former senior superintendent of police named Nixon Agasirwe.
And the case prosecutors built against him is just wild. They say he orchestrated the whole shebang. He got the money, the guns, the inside info. And get this, they claim he even went to the crime scene and took Kagezi's laptop and her files. Talk about obstruction. And the motive? Well, it doesn't get much clearer. Kagezi was prosecuting him for murder and robbery. She was about to put him away.
But just when you think you've got it all figured out, the case takes another twist. As the prosecutors are zeroing in on Agasire, one of the other guys accused with him throws a wrench in the works.
So, another co-accused, a man named Abdu Noor Samuju, alleges that he was tortured while in custody to get him to confess. Now, that's a huge deal, right? It could have thrown the whole case out. But the court looked into it, they ordered medical exams, and a magistrate reviewed all the evidence. The ruling? The claim was dismissed. They found no credible proof, so the trial was back on.
Okay, so let's take a step back. What does this all add up to? Because this story, it's about so much more than just one person's murder. It's really about her legacy and what her death revealed about the justice system in Uganda.
This is why this case is so important. First, it's a terrifying symbol of what can happen when you try to prosecute powerful people. Second, it's a huge test for the country. Can the rule of law actually win against corruption inside the system? And third, you can imagine the impact this had. Prosecutors even said in court that her murder sent a chill down the spine of the entire legal community.
You know, Joan Kagezi's entire career was about chasing the truth. And now, all these years after her death, the truth about who killed her and why is being chased in that very same court system. It's a trial that has the whole country watching, and we're still waiting to see how it ends.